Kyle is with us right now. So Brad, we will let you take over.
Awesome. Thank you, Judy.
Bye.
Thank you, Francis. Appreciate it. All right. You know, it's interesting, Kyle, when I think of you, I think of just all of the titles, all of the labels that we could put for you. You know, driver, owner, philanthropist, 6-time dad, author, musician, you know, motorcyclist, you name it. Broadcaster, everything is Kyle Petty and all the things that you have done. But welcome. Really happy you're joining us here today. And it's always great chatting with you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So if you really want to know, you just have to go to my Twitter, because my Twitter says just Kyle. That's all you need to know. It's not all that other stuff. It's just Kyle.
See, I go to Twitter for other things when it comes to Kyle Petty, especially the way that you engage the fan base. and an only way that you can do it. You know, I can still remember, gosh, I think we were back in New Hampshire. I mean, I don't know how old Twitter, maybe this was 10 years ago or more, but we were laughing at you. I think Doug Rice from PRN and I passed you in the elevator, and someone had literally just tweeted something to you about, you know, riding on the coattails of your father. And you're like, wow, congratulations. No one's ever said that to me before. Just the nice, simple way you can, you know, both diffuse and respond to someone. But that's what's fun about you. I don't think you've never held back an opinion, have you?
No. And I tell people that I think I get that from my mom. Honestly, when you walked in the door, you had to make her you had to make her like you. My dad was like, come on in, man. It's going to be a great time. You know what I mean? My mom's like, what are you here for? What are you here for? So it's that cynical side a little bit. But yeah, I have an opinion. And I say this, and I've said this, Brad, you know, working with you and Doug Rice and Alexis Erickson on Fast Talk and doing that. It's one day you wake up and you realize I grew up in this sport and got to go to the racetrack and watch Bobby Isaac and Bobby Allison and Cale Yarborough when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. Then I got to race against a lot of them when I started in the late 70s, and Earnhardt came in, and Terry Labonte and Harry Gant and those guys. And I was here when Jeff Gordon got here, and I was here when Jimmy Johnson. So my opinion is based on what I consider a vast period of time. It's not just, I just didn't form it yesterday. It's been coming for a long time.
Well, this is good because you have a new book out, and I'm going to call it your first book because I'm expecting some follow-ups, by the way. Swerve or Die. And it's just, I remember, gosh, maybe more than a year ago when you first tweeted out about, you know, the book and everything. I was really excited. And when it came out, for me, the way I consume books typically is by listening to them on audiobook. And thankfully, it's even better when it's a biography and the author is actually the one that narrates the book. And you did as well, which is great. But you talk about your upbringing, and look, for you growing up, having your father as a race car driver, that was like normal. Like, what do other dads do? Aren't all my friends' dads race car drivers too? I mean, to you, this has never been like a big sensational thing. It's just kind of been what you've known, right?
Yeah, and exactly. It's all I ever knew. And I tell people, and you know, that I grew up in a rural community that were mostly farmers. We just happened to farm race cars. That's what we did. And honestly, I was in the 2nd grade before I realized that everybody's father didn't have a race car, because we went to the race car track and we saw the Pearson boys and the Jarretts and the Allisons. And, you know, every weekend I was at a racetrack with a bunch of kids, and their dad drove race cars. So why didn't everybody's dad drive a race car? So it was just normal. And everybody has their own normal. Everybody, whatever family you grow up in, that's your normal. And I was just very blessed to grow up in a family that was in this sport, that loved this sport, that had a passion for racing and had a passion for cars and the automobile. And, you know, it was from an early age, that's all I ever wanted to do. I've dabbled in a little bit of everything, but my first love has always been riding around in circles and hanging onto a steering wheel. So that's always been it. So I was very blessed in that way.
Let's talk about your book, first of all, Swerve or Die. And what motivated you to write this and to write it in the way that you did? Meaning, it is a great biography of your life and a good snapshot of it. But what's the thought process that started with that?
You know, I think the thing was, just like I said a minute ago, is that being around Bobby Isaac when you're 6 or 7 years old, being around Dale Earnhardt Sr. in his rookie year, being around Jeff Gordon in his rookie year, and then after he wins those championships, being around Jimmy Johnson after 7 championships. You know, it's that there's so many stories that happen between 1966 and 2010. You know what I mean? When you start 2008, the last time I sat in a race car, when you look at it. So and you know me, man, listen, the gift of gab, I got it in abundance, man, and I will tell a story in a heartbeat. And you've just had those stories, and they've been in your vernacular, they've been in your mind for so long. And the pandemic came along. My wife Morgan was pregnant with our second child with Cotton. Overton was 2 years old. And I just sat down and started writing, and then got up with Ellis Hennigan, who had helped Michael. And he kind of put it all together, but I wanted it to come across just like this, like we were sitting across from each other and having a conversation. I didn't want it to read like, this is Kyle Petty and this is his book and this is the way it was. You know, I didn't want it to be that way. I wanted to be like, you know, you're having pizza and a beer and somebody's talking to you. And I think Ellis did a great job, and I think we did a great job of doing that and coming across. So there's stories about my granddad and my dad, and about Adam, and about myself, and then about fans. So there's a little bit of everything in the book. And you know, and then in the end, I talk a little bit about NASCAR and where it's going, or where I think it might be going. So there's a little bit of everything in it.
Yeah, I look, I don't want to give away your stories because they're your stories, first of all. And I think people should actually pick it up and read it or listen to it. By the way, if you listen to it, there's a really cool song at the end as well. But we're going to get to your musical career coming up here in just a little bit. But for me, a lot of the things stand out. I mean, it opens up very powerfully with how you learned about Adam's, you know, death. And that's, you know, it's a tragic story, but one that you tell throughout the book as it goes on. But little snippets along the way, what it was like. It's not just what it was like for you growing up with Richard Petty. And I was thinking about this earlier. You tell about what it was like being Richard Petty, raising a kid like you. You know, things like the what was the motorcycle story? I can't remember what the title of it was, but you know, the longest motorcycle walk or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, just things like that along the way. But what was it like for the King raising you?
You know, it probably worse for my mom. Yeah, my dad, the story you're talking about was, what was that, 7, 8, 9 years old, the first time the cops bring you home. That's got to be a great story for a dad.
The first time the cops bring you home, by the way.
The first time the cops bring you home, because you're riding a motorcycle down the middle of the highway. So, but you know what? It was, I'm sure it was interesting, because I have always been, and I think, again, I think I get a little bit of this from my mom. I've always been that guy who, I'm not afraid to fail, not afraid to fall flat on my face. You guys know that. You see me fall flat on my face plenty of times, but I'm afraid not to try. So if people's, you know, if we're going to ride a bull, I got my hand up, baby.
You've done it.
Fly around. I got my hand up, man. You know, we're going to do something. So I think that was tough for my dad to understand, because he was single focused. He was, you know, go to the race shop, go win races, come home. That was it. I was, go to the race shop, now let's work on motorcycles. Go to the race shop, now let's go do something different. You know what I mean? It always went through the race shop, I will say that. But he was a great dad. He was a great dad. He would go for weeks and not be home. But when he was home, he was home. And I think that's an important thing, is that time. The time that he gave myself and my 3 sisters, there's nothing that replaces that. And that's the way I've always tried to be with my kids and with my family.
Yeah, and I love the way you talk about your mother in the book and her raising you as well, but also the family as a whole. You know, and it's a pretty big family too. And the racing fan, you know, the one thing I get out of it as well, like you said, you guys are from a small town, you know, Level Cross, North Carolina, but how much community involvement and family involvement is involved in, you know, not just raising you, but your sisters and everyone else.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. And I say it in the book, man, you couldn't do anything in town, because by the time you did it in the community, it beat you home. Okay. That telephone, you can outrun a car, but you can't outrun that telephone line. I can tell you that right now. But you know what? I think it prepared us in a lot of ways and it prepared me, obviously, I think in a lot of ways for the racing community. The racing community is a small community. You were just talking to Alan, did that interview with the British touring car and the supercar series and stuff. And, you know, we're all in the racing business. We're all in the racing community. I don't care whether it's, you know, in Europe and Australia and China. I don't care where it's at. We all understand one thing, and that's race cars. And that's the way it was in level cross. We all understand that sense of community. And you look after each other, and we see it in the racing community all the time. Everybody pulls together, and when somebody steps out of line, everybody points a finger and says, "Get back in line." That's the kind of the way it is in that community too. So I think growing up in that small town and growing up that way kind of prepared me for who was going to be staring at me when I came to the racing community.
Yeah, you know, a lot of other things in the book. You know, you talk about why you didn't race for your dad, how the business went the way it did. You know, you and Felix, and how basically you ended that driving relationship. And you're pretty open and honest about your evaluation, your assessment of who you were as a racer as well.
Yeah, listen, I was, you know, I'm very, very blessed to be there and know the history of my granddad and all the races he won and the championships and my dad and everything that he did. I was never Richard Petty. I was never Lee Petty. I was Kyle Petty. I was more of a journeyman. And I look at it and yeah, there's plenty of me in every sport you watch, man. That's the way it is. That rare air that a Richard Petty, that a Jimmy Johnson, that a Jeff Gordon, that a Dale Earnhardt Sr., that rare air, I was never able to breathe, but I was there with those guys. And at some point in time, they knew my name. I will say this, at some point in time, they knew who I was. So, and that's special, you know, to be able to watch that and be a part of that. But, you know, I am extremely proud of everything that I've been able to do in this sport. And how, you know, when Adam's accident happened, how the sport and the community rallied behind us. And we were able to take this platform, the Motorsports platform, and do something bigger than what Motorsports ever is or ever will be, and build that camp for kids. So that's been for me. I think God put me here to drive a race car so that someday when this happened, and he knows when things happen, when this happened, that good was in this future.
You know, I love the way you talk about how you know, Adam and Austin interacted as kids. There's a great story about Adam's you know, gold colored Corvette and things in there. But it really, I mean, it's, again, I don't want to give away stories because I want people to read the book because it really is that fascinating. It's something you won't put down. But the Victory Junction Gang Camp, and we know that when you started that, and you even tell the story of how that started and some of the struggles along the way. But it was always done in honor of Adam. But I don't think I had ever heard until going through your book exactly Adam's, you know, how he planted the seed for that, if you will.
Yeah, you know, we had been on a motorcycle trip, and it's in the book, you know, and had been to Boggy Creek, which is a sister camp to, it's in Eustis, Florida, right over from Daytona, and it's a sister camp, one of Paul Newman's serious fun camps, and you know, Adam was just so enthralled with that. At the time, he was doing things with Sprint and connecting different children's hospitals through the Sprint network. So he understood what it was like to go to the hospital and see these kids. He understood what it was like to spend the day with these children. And once he saw camp, he's like, man, we don't have to go to the hospital to see them. We can build a camp and make it happen. And, you know, that was something that lit a fire in him. And I'm sure if he had lived, that at some point in time, you'd be talking to him about the camp that he built, not about the camp that was built in his honor. So I was very blessed to drive some sports car races with Paul Newman. So when Adam's accident happened, it just all, you know, the pieces were there. It's just like I said, the platform was there, the pieces were there, the people were there, and a dream became a reality. And you know, we've seen over 100,000 kids totally free of charge through there and their families. So it is an amazing, amazing thing. And we have been very blessed. And hopefully some of these kids will go on to work in the racing community. They all talk about it, man. When you go to Victory Junction, it's that race theme, man. So they all want to be there. And when we bring teams in on Tuesday nights to do pit stops and stuff, they all want to change tires and they all want to be the driver. That's it. So those are the two star positions. If you like, the quarterback is a star position in football, driver and tire changer is a star position when it comes to camp.
That's great. Well, and with the camp, you know, this is something we talk about community and racing. You know, looking at the picture up there behind you, I think is great. One of the big fundraisers, the
Yes.
Kyle Petty Charity Ride, which has now been going on for more than a quarter of a century. And I know just a couple of weeks ago, you and your family were out there looking at the route for 2023, and it was great to see you guys back on the road this past season. But not only just through the charity ride, but everything else, how the community has come together to help Victory Junction Gang Camp. Talk about that.
Yeah, you know, it's phenomenal. You know, we started the ride started back in '95. And it was really one of the first things in our sport to be at that level that would go out. The Winston Cup Racing Wives and some of those had fundraisers, but this was more on a national level. I mean, it's right across America, and we were riding from California to North Carolina every year. You know, our 25th year, we went from Seattle to Key West, or Key Largo. So that's a long way. But you know, we've raised over $20 million in that period of time for different children's charities, and mainly for Victory Junction now. But along the way, Jeff Gordon started his foundation. Dale Jr. started his foundation. Jimmy Johnson, Michael Waltrip, Ryan Newman. So many people started foundations after the charity ride's inception. And when the camp came about, all of those guys, every single one of them. Kevin Harvick used to come to camp on Tuesday nights religiously and just hang out with the kids. So, you know, it's the unexpected guys sometimes, and you look at them and they're there playing with the kids, but they're there with their foundations. And with their foundations came their fans, came Kevin Harvick fans. And they'd donate $29 a month when he drove for Childress, you know, which was so cool, man. It was just so cool to see that, to see his fans and his fan bases step up. Jeff Gordon's fans the same way. Dale Jr. fans. I was glad when Dale Jr. went from 8 to 88. It helped my fundraising a little bit. I will say that. But it is so cool to see that. And so many sponsors, so many partners. Rick Hendrick. Rick Hendrick, the fuel stop after Ricky's accident, their tragic accident, he built the fuel stop for us, which is the cafeteria. So the racing community rallied behind this camp. And I say it all the time. We lost a son and we raised our hand. My dad and I raised our hand and we said, we're going to build a camp. And everybody said, okay, we'll help you. And they have continued to help, and the race fans have continued to help, and the industry has continued to help.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Where is the ride going to be in 2023?
The ride this year, we're starting in Salt Lake City. We're going to Ely, Nevada, which is one of my favorite places in the world. It's right there is where the loneliest road in America starts, man. The loneliest highway in America, Highway 50. We're going to Tonopah, then down to Vegas, over to Cedar City, Utah, up to Moab, and then back. We're doing a circle ride. We've ridden across this country so many times that now we're at that stage where we're just making giant loops and seeing things that we've been riding by. So we're really excited. Morgan, myself, and Overton and Cotton and Devant, my 3 little boys, her parents and Jenny went out and did the site inspection. We had a great site inspection, so we're looking forward to it.
You know, you mentioned Morgan, your wife, mother of 3 of your children. I don't even know if this is good of a story, but one of my favorite things in the book is, I don't remember if you titled the chapter this or whatever, but not the son-in-law you wanted, but just everything that she's done for your life. And anyone who knows Kyle Petty, if you want anything or need anything from Kyle Petty, you don't go to Kyle, you go to Morgan.
No, that's it. Listen, that was the most appropriate title. Appropriate thing that I could say to her parents when I asked them if I could marry her is, I know I'm not the son-in-law you dreamed of. I'm not the son-in-law anybody would ever dream of. I will say that, but she has changed my life in so many ways. It's so funny. We were talking about it almost this morning, just how I look at things. She's just brought joy to my life. So has Overton and Cotton and Devant. And you know, it's good to live in a positive world, and she makes my world positive.
Yeah, she's wonderful. All right. So I mentioned if you listen to the audiobook of Swerve or Die at the end, you have a really good song and it sounds amazing. I mean, this is like very professionally recorded, but I had the great pleasure, along with a lot of folks with the Performance Racing Network. We went and actually saw you perform in Johnson City, Tennessee, you know, before COVID. And if you've never seen Kyle Petty on stage, well, you're missing out. You know, first of all, you're entertaining. Second of all, some of your songs, how you come up with some of those lyrics is pretty fun as well. But you're back out there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, listen, this Friday night, I'm at High Rock Outfitters over in Lexington, over in Childress Country, Lexington, North Carolina. I'm going up to Sparta, North Carolina on Saturday night to play a show up there. But it's just been fun. I've always written. Marty Robbins drove a race car. He's the first guy that I really saw play a guitar. And I thought, man, he makes beautiful music come out of that little wooden box. I'm going to do that someday. And then grew up here in North Carolina, and with James Taylor, and then discovered Harry Chapin and John Prine and Jim Croce and Carole King and singer-songwriters like that. And just kind of fell into that and been writing since I was in high school and just continued. And I told Morgan one day, I said, I know you're getting tired of hearing all my songs. I'm going to go play them for somebody else. So she dropped me off at an open mic night, and that's kind of where it all started again. So I've been doing that again, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. The song that's on the thing, on the audiobook, is a song I wrote after my racing career was over and my dad sold the team. That's why I said they sold my tent and made me sold my job and made me pack my tent away. So that's more of an autobiographical song right there. It's pretty brutal. I will say that's a pretty honest song, but it was fun to do.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe a lot of your songs. All right, how many of those were written on the gas tank of a motorcycle?
Lots of them, man. Lots of them. I know that sounds crazy to you people out there, but when I'm riding on a motorcycle, and Brad, you're a rider, you are a long distance rider, and that's the deal. A lot of people will ride from here to dinner and then back, and they're, yeah, I'm a rider, man. I'm a rider, and that's cool, man. If you're on a bike, riding is riding. I will give you that. But when you jump on and you ride 10 or 12 hours and you've ridden all day, so sometimes I get these songs in my head and I start talking to myself, which that's pretty normal, but I start talking and singing to myself, and I take a Sharpie and I write the lyrics down on my gas tank, on my Harley while I'm riding. And then when I get to a gas stop, I take my book out and I write them down in my book. And then I take a gas rag and I wipe off my gas tank and wipe all the lyrics off. It's like a whiteboard. It's like a giant whiteboard, man. And it works. I've written on the chrome on the gas tank. I've written on the side. I've written on the saddlebag to my side when I run out of room. Man, when I get on a roll, I'm on a roll.
That's awesome. It really is. You mentioned, like, the end of your book, you talk a lot about the future of racing, which is really interesting, especially coming from you, like where we're going, how we're going to power these race cars and all of that. Part of the future of racing is happening now as well. And there is a question from the panel asking about how rejuvenated the King is now that another 7-time champion has teamed up with Petty GMS Motorsports and Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, it came out of the blue, honestly. But in a lot of ways is phenomenal. For my dad's team, for Petty GMS, they're going to have to add Johnson in there somewhere, man, because you can't leave a 7-time out. There's no way, I don't know what you're going to call it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, man, it is great to have Jimmy back here. He did a great job and represented our sport great in IndyCar racing, great in sports car. He's just a great ambassador for motorsports. So to have him back with what a lot of people consider the original ambassador for what NASCAR is, and my dad, those two together with Maury and Mike Beam and everything they're doing at Petty GMS is just phenomenal. And I'm going to say this, and you guys, as I was watching some of this, you talk about Justin Marks. Justin Marks is a game changer. Justin Marks has changed this sport in so many ways that I don't think a lot of people realize. Will it stay changed? That's going to be the interesting part. That's going to be to see how the Hendrick teams react, to see how the Penske's react, to see how the Gibbs react to what Justin has done and how he's changed the sport. The car changed the sport. So it's the perfect time for new owners. So when you look at our sport and you look at the Roger Penske and the Rick Hendrick and the Gibbs and the Richard Pettys and guys like that, and the Jack Roush's, we had honestly a lot of 75 plus guy owners, 75-year-old plus owners. Now we've got Justin Marks. Now we've got Michael Jordan. Now we've got Jimmy Johnson. Now we've got Pitbull. When you look at it, we've got a roster of superstar owners again, in their own right, in whatever industry they were in. And that is a huge plus for the sport. You went to LA, you go to Chicago and race in the streets. That's a huge plus for the sport. You look at Daniel Suarez, You look at Kyle Larson, you look at Joey Logano winning his second championship at 32. That is a huge plus for the sport. All these young drivers. So the sport is in a great place. I think motorsports worldwide is in a great place, to be totally honest with you. But NASCAR has put itself in a great place in North America, and especially in the United States, to be able to position itself to take advantage of all these things. And I think Jimmy is just another cog in that wheel, another brick in that wall to be able to build a solid foundation to move forward.
You know, it's interesting. You use the word change, and it's an appropriate word, and it gets used often. Sometimes you would almost think it's a four-letter word in NASCAR. It's for a sport that moves so fast. There are a lot of people who want it to stand still in some ways, but I always like to use the term evolve, because it's going to have to evolve. Technology in and of itself is going to evolve, so the sport has to evolve. But one thing I do love about it is someone like yourself, Dale Jarrett, the people that you broadcast races with on NBC are still a major part of this sport, so we can hang on to that, what got us here, as we still look forward to where we're going.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is you need the old guys so we can tell you how it used to be, so you know how far it's come forward.
So someone has to talk about, walking uphill for 6 miles both ways in the snow going to school, right?
Exactly. But you know what? Here's the fascinating part, and I say this to you. I think this sport has constantly evolved from the very, very beginning. My dad said when they rolled into Charlotte for that first race in 1949, and they ran it, that 80% of the people there were in the liquor business, were in the illegal moonshine business. And it evolved from that to the manufacturers, Carl Kiekhaefer in the 50s. And it evolved to the early 60s. Manufacturers were spending money here. Then when the fuel shortage went crazy, then they pulled out, and who comes in? RJ Reynolds Tobacco. And the sport did what it needed to do for that. When they were out, it did what it needed to do for Nextel and for Sprint. It constantly evolved, it constantly changed, it constantly moves to stay relevant to whatever the market needs to be. And I think we have to applaud NASCAR and the leadership there to be able to make those changes and continue to do that. At the same time, we as a fan base and we as an industry have to constantly be open to that and be open to those that evolution, to be able to welcome that. I think what we did at NASCAR was a little bit slow because we stayed with this car for so long that when we finally went to the next gen, it looked like we went from a biplane to a space shuttle in a lot of ways, because that's about how far it was. But through a year of running it, through working out and tweaking it, the product gets better, the product on the racetrack gets better, the sport gets better, and I think the fan base gets bigger because of that. So as I look at it, I think the evolution of where we're at now and where we can be is only a bright day coming.
Yeah. Well, your book, Swerve or Die, it can be found anywhere books are found, right? I mean,
Yes.
Amazon, all of that. I picked it up off of Audible, where I get my books to listen to. Kyle Petty Charity Ride 2023. It sounds like you guys are going to have a great time out there for sure. And then this weekend, Lexington and
Sparta, North Carolina.
Sparta.
It's up in the mountains.
All right. Awesome. Kyle, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I think we could spend the whole day with you, by the way, and really glad you're here.
Thank
And
you,
I
man. I
vote-
appreciate it, man.
I vote that Kyle has the coolest backdrop.
Oh yeah. We tried to turn it on. It's neon. We tried to turn it on, but it washed everything out. So sorry about that.
Love it. Love it.
But thank you very much, Kyle.
Registering on EparTrade is easy. To start, click on the Join for Free button on the homepage. First, search your company to see if it's already in our database. If you see your company on the list, click on it to select it. Then, choose Claim Company if you are one of the decision makers, an owner, marketing person, or main company contact. Or choose Join Company if you are an employee, and press Continue. If you couldn't find your company in our database, select Register a New Company. On the following page, fill out your name, email, phone number, job title, and choose a secure password. If you chose Register a New Company, you'll need to choose your business type. Select Supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to source new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional race team. Then, enter your company name. Please provide a website, Facebook page, or LinkedIn if you have one, and choose to either claim or join the company. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Finally, click Register Now and your registration will be submitted for approval. An email will be sent to your inbox. Please confirm your email address and you will be approved shortly. Welcome to EparTrade.